There are moments in life that arrive quietly, no thunder, no warning, just a folding chair scraping against a gymnasium floor and an empty seat where a father was supposed to be sitting. This story takes place in a mid-sized city in Ohio, in the kind of spring that smells like fresh rain and possibility, the kind of day designed to make you feel like your hard work finally meant something. A young woman stood on a stage in a white uniform, her name called out loud for the first time in her professional life, and she turned to find her family in the crowd. What she found instead was a gap, a deliberate, choreographed absence that told her everything she had been refusing to believe for years, and what happened 9 days later changed everything. My name is Dana Holloway. I am 29 years old. I work as a registered nurse in the cardiac step-down unit at Riverside General Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. I have been on that floor for 14 months, and before that I spent 3 years in nursing school, 2 years in prerequisites at a community college, and 4 years telling myself that if I just worked hard enough, if I just stayed quiet enough, if I just kept showing up, my father would eventually see me the way I needed him to. I live in a one-bedroom apartment 12 minutes from the hospital. My scrubs are navy blue. I drink bad coffee at 5:45 in the morning before my shift, and I eat lunch standing up most days, and I have not taken a vacation in 2.5 years. I am not telling you this for sympathy. I am telling you this so you understand exactly what kind of woman I am, and exactly what kind of woman my family kept pretending did not exist. The day of my graduation, I woke up at 6 in the morning, even though I did not need to be anywhere until noon. I ironed my white uniform the night before. I had already laid out my cap on the kitchen table. I had texted my father 3 days earlier to confirm he was coming, and he had replied with a thumbs up emoji. Just a thumbs up. Not, I'm proud of you. Not, I'll be there early. A thumbs up, the way you confirm a lunch reservation. I told myself it was enough. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me, what time is it for you right now, and where are you watching from? I'm curious to see how far this story will travel. The graduation ceremony was held in the main gymnasium of Harmon College of Nursing. The room smelled like industrial floor cleaner and someone's gardenia perfume, and the particular nervous energy of 200 families trying to take pictures at the same time. The folding chairs were arranged in long white rows, and the family section filled up fast. I had saved 2 seats, one for my father and one for my stepmother, Linda, even though Linda had made it abundantly clear over the years that my milestones were inconvenient scheduling conflicts. I saved the seats with a piece of paper that said, Holloway Family, written in blue marker. I remember that detail because I threw it in a trash can afterward and watched it land at the bottom of an otherwise empty bin. I sat with my cohort. We were 43 graduates. The woman to my left, a girl named Priya who I had studied with through 2 brutal pharmacology finals, kept leaning over to ask if my family had found their seats yet. I kept telling her they were probably still parking. Then the ceremony started. The dean spoke for 11 minutes about the weight of the nursing profession, about choosing a life of service, and my eyes kept drifting to those 2 empty chairs in row 4. They stayed empty through the opening remarks. They stayed empty through the faculty introduction. They stayed empty when my name was called, Dana Marie Holloway. I walked across that stage. I shook the dean's hand. I took my diploma. I smiled for the official photographer because I had paid $45 for the photo package and I was not going to waste it. And in the precise moment the camera flashed, I understood something I had been circling for years. This was not a miscommunication. My father had not gotten the date wrong. He had not been stuck in traffic or held up at work. He had made a choice, and the choice was not me. And that choice had been made before I even sent that confirmation text. The thumbs up was not a confirmation, it was a dismissal. I found out that evening through my Aunt Patricia, who called me while I was still in my car in the parking garage still wearing my cap, that my father and Linda had attended a baseball game that afternoon. Not a championship, not a playoff. A regular season recreational league game for Linda's son Marcus, who was 17 and played left field for a team called the River Hawks. My father had been in the bleachers eating a hot dog and cheering for another man's son while I walked across a stage I had bled for. My Aunt Patricia said it, almost apologetically, like she was delivering a diagnosis. He said he thought you'd understand, Dana. He said you always understand. I sat in that parking garage for 40 minutes. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that. I did not cry because I had already used up all the crying years earlier, at Christmas dinners where Linda's children got envelopes, and I got a card with no check inside it. At birthday calls that came 2 days late at the time, my father told me nursing school was a safe choice for someone who wasn't academically gifted, as if the acceptance letter I showed him meant nothing. I had done all my crying. What I felt in that garage was different. It was specific and cold and quiet, like a thermostat clicking off. When I got home, I made dinner. I ate it at my kitchen table. I called Priya and we talked for an hour and she told me she was proud of me and I believed her. Then I opened my laptop and I looked at something I had been meaning to look at for several months. My father's car loan account. I need to explain something. 3 years ago, when my father's credit score took a significant hit after a dispute with a contractor, he could not qualify for the auto loan he needed to buy the truck he drives for his contracting work. A truck he uses every single day to generate income. He came to me, not Linda, not Linda's family, not any of the people he had chosen over me. He came to me and he asked me to co-sign, and I did. I co-signed because that is what I had always done. I had been financially propping up a man who could not be bothered to drive 40 minutes to watch me graduate. I had been making the actual payments, not my father. Me. I set up autopay from my checking account 14 months ago when he fell behind during a slow work season. He knew. He had thanked me. He had never once offered to resume paying. The arrangement had quietly become permanent in the way that all exploitation becomes permanent. Gradually, then completely, so slowly that neither party formally acknowledges when the favor became a condition. The monthly payment was $514. I had made 14 consecutive payments. That was $7,001 times 6 I had deposited directly into his life while he was deciding whether my graduation was worth his afternoon. I called the lender the next morning. It was a Saturday. I reached a customer service representative named Gerald who was genuinely kind and walked me through my options. As a cosigner, I could formally request removal from the loan with appropriate documentation and a review of my father's current creditworthiness. I told Gerald I understood the process. I also canceled the autopay transfer that same morning, which I was fully within my rights to do. It was my account, my transfer, my money. I did not notify my father. I did not send a text. I did not call. I went to work that afternoon, took a 12-hour shift on the cardiac floor, held a patient's hand during a procedure, charted for 2 hours after my shift ended, and drove home in the early morning quiet. I said one thing to myself when I turned off the car in my apartment lot. I said it out loud, to no one, to the steering wheel. I said, "You do not owe anyone the money to pay for your own erasure." For 9 days, nothing happened. My father did not call to ask about the payment. He did not reach out to acknowledge the graduation. Life continued in its ordinary shape. I picked up an extra shift. I renewed my nursing license. I bought new compression socks. I started a book I had been meaning to read for 2 years. I slept better than I had in months. On the 9th day, my phone rang at 7014 in the morning. It was my father. I did not answer. He called again. I did not answer. Over the following 6 hours, I received 41 calls from my father, 11 texts from Linda, and 1 voicemail from a number I didn't recognize that turned out to be Marcus, Linda's son, the left fielder. The reason I stood alone on a stage, asking if I could talk some sense into whatever was happening. By the end of that day, the number had climbed to 41 calls, 33 texts, and 4 voicemails, the last of which I did listen to. Because I wanted to hear exactly what 41 attempts at contact sounded like when they came from someone who could not be bothered to drive 40 minutes. My father's voice in that final voicemail was a register I had never heard from him before. It was high and tight and stripped of all the casual authority he usually carried. The truck payment had bounced. The lender had notified him. He was behind. He needed me to reinstate the transfer. He said, and I want you to hear this exactly. He said, "Dana, this is serious. This affects my livelihood. I need you to be reasonable about this." Reasonable. The same man who sat in a bleacher with a hot dog while I accepted my nursing diploma was asking me to be reasonable. I called him back 2 days later. I drove to his house. I sat across from him and Linda at their kitchen table, and I watched their faces as I explained calmly, using the same tone I use when I explain medication interactions to patients, that I was removing myself as cosigner, that the auto-pay transfer had been canceled, that I wished him well with the loan adjustment process, and that I was not available to resume payments. Linda asked me if I was doing this out of spite. I told her no. I said, "I'm doing this because I finally believe what you've been showing me for years." My father looked at me the way people look at something they thought was permanent when it moves for the first time. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I gathered my keys from the table, the way someone gathers themselves after a very long trip, and I walked out. The truck was repossessed 19 days after my graduation. My father lost 3 scheduled jobs that week. He called my Aunt Patricia, who called me, and I told her I loved her, and that I needed her to understand that my peace was not something I was willing to negotiate anymore. She said quietly, "I know, baby. I know. I have thought a lot about what it means to love someone who consistently chooses your absence. I used to confuse endurance with loyalty. I thought that staying through the Christmas dinners and the missed calls and the 'you always understand,' I thought staying was proof of my devotion. But devotion requires a witness, and a man who does not come to your graduation has made his answer very clear. They trained me to stay small. They trained me to take up as little space as a thumbs-up emoji, to be grateful for the bare minimum, to frame my own abandonment as independence. Love that demands your silence is not love, it is control. And the moment I stopped funding the control, I found out exactly how much of it I had been carrying. I wear my navy scrubs to work 5 days a week. I eat lunch standing up. I drink bad coffee at 5,045 in the morning. And I do all of it knowing that I walked across that stage, shook that dean's hand, and received that diploma for one person and one person only. And she was the only one in that room who mattered. So here is what I want to ask you. If you were sitting at that table, would you have stayed or walked out? Comment one word. GOGE. On knee if you would cut contact. Chance if you believe family always deserves one more chance.